Survival in the American West of the 1880s was a matter of narrow margins. A family's future could be halted by hidden river quicksand or cut short by a single, unchecked outbreak of diphtheria. Adelaide Cedilla Allen was born into this environment in 1874. She grew up in a one-room log house in the Utah Territory, one of many children living in a rugged, isolated outpost. Baseline survival was a product of manual labor. Even the youngest children spent their days spinning yarn, weaving cloth, and hauling water, knowing that a single farm accident could lead to a permanent loss of livelihood. In this environment, the mother of the household functioned as the family's only effective defense, providing the organization and labor that kept the unit from falling apart. In November 1889, that defense vanished. Adelaide's mother died, leaving behind a massive family and an infant only 5 days old. Adelaide was 15. That night, Adelaide overheard the adults discussing the family's future. She heard someone say, "Adelaide can take over and manage." In that moment, she made a silent vow that she would not fail. Her childhood ended that night, replaced by the immediate, heavy responsibilities of a frontier matriarch. The logistical burden was enormous. Adelaide took over the cooking, cleaning, washing, and ironing for her half-dozen siblings, performing every task by hand without the help of modern appliances. To prevent the household from failing, she implemented a rigid system of chores. She paired the children up, one to cook, one to tend the baby, ensuring that every pair was accountable for a specific part of the family's survival. Her pursuit of personal interests stopped almost immediately. After taking only 5 organ lessons, she was struck by the feeling that spending family resources and time on herself was a betrayal. She never took another lesson. Her youth was entirely occupied by the mechanics of adult survival. On the frontier, young women were forced into hyper-competence, often sacrificing their own adolescence to keep their families intact. At age 19, she married Horace Fuller. Together, they moved to Arizona with the goal of building a successful dairy farm, starting their new life in a set of heavy canvas tents. But the high infant mortality rates of the era soon reached her household. She lost one twin from her first set, and then both twins from her second set to pneumonia. The final blow arrived in the winter of 1904, when Horace also contracted pneumonia and died. Adelaide was left a young widow with 4 children, a dairy farm to run alone, and a significant bank debt. The frontier had now claimed her mother, 3 of her children, and her husband. She was left on her own, isolated against the elements, and facing the prospect of total failure. Instead of succumbing to the grief, Adelaide chose to fight the diseases that had shattered her family. She decided she would no longer be a passive observer of the frontier mortality rate. In 1900, she enrolled in a formal obstetrics and nursing class. She was determined to learn exactly how to save lives and provide the medical care she felt had been missing during her own tragedies. She managed the farm's finances with the same precision, selling her horses to clear the bank debt. She continued to manage the dairy herd alone while hiring contractors to replace their tents with a permanent brick home. This training made her a central figure in her community. She became a midwife who delivered new babies, and a nurse who compassionately cared for the sick and prepared the dead for burial. Adelaide transformed her personal loss into a set of specialized skills, turning herself into the medical and emotional shield her community relied upon. Her second marriage to Charles Peterson required even greater coordination. She successfully blended their 2 large families into a single functioning household. Their joint agricultural operation eventually grew far beyond basic dairy farming. They raised registered cattle, mules, and even ostriches, while managing extensive fruit and nut orchards that supported the local economy. Decades of labor eventually allowed for the luxuries of the 20th century, such as a leisure trip to the San Francisco World's Fair, where she navigated the bay by ship and explored international exhibits. Through her work as a midwife and her success as a producer, she provided a stable foundation for the growing Mesa community during its earliest years. By the end of her life, the girl who had crossed the Colorado River in a covered wagon was driving her own Chevrolet across state lines to visit her descendants. In 1877, a church leader had given her a patriarchal blessing, that predicted she would be a wise mother and useful among the sick. She lived those words for the next 8 decades, serving as a Relief Society teacher for 65 years and continuing her temple service well into her 80s. Adelaide Peterson did not simply survive the frontier. She absorbed its losses and transformed them into a permanent infrastructure of care and protection for the generations that followed.